Women often say that men are naturally unfaithful, but my wife, apparently, didn't know that there are exceptions. From the early years of our marriage, she was obsessed with one idea: I was cheating on her. And the longer we were together, the worse her paranoia became. I worked as a financial consultant at a large firm, came home on time, took care of our kids, and never gave her a reason to doubt my loyalty. But Emma always found one. If I stayed late at the office, it meant I was with another woman. If my phone was on silent, I was hiding texts. One time, she even threw a fit because I bought a new cologne, convinced I was trying to impress someone else. At first, I tried to explain, to reassure her, even to laugh it off. Then I started getting angry. We argued, made up, argued again. I thought one day this would pass, but I was wrong. Emma's accusations weren't just words. She would check my phone when she thought I was asleep, scroll through my emails when I left my laptop open. If she found nothing, which was always the case, she would insist I must have deleted the evidence. There was no winning with her. If a female colleague texted me about a work-related issue, Emma would demand to know why I hadn't mentioned it before. If I came home too cheerful, she suspected I had been with someone else. If I came home tired and grumpy, she assumed guilt was eating me alive. One evening, I came home to find her sitting at the dining table, my phone in front of her, her arms crossed. "Who's Julia?" she demanded. I blinked. "Julia? You mean my assistant? The one you met at the Christmas party?" "She sent you a message at 7:42 p.m., Emma said. "Why would your assistant text you after hours?" I sighed. "Because we have a meeting tomorrow, and she wanted to remind me about the client's request." Emma's eyes narrowed. "And you expect me to believe that?" I was exhausted. "Emma, you're not a detective. You're my wife. You're supposed to trust me." She scoffed. "Trust? How can I trust a man who keeps secrets?" "There are no secrets," I said, my patience wearing thin. "You're looking for something that isn't there." But to Emma, the absence of proof was just further proof that I was covering my tracks. And so, our marriage became a battlefield. A cycle of suspicion, denial, and constant tension. The love that once bonded us together was being chipped away, piece by piece, by her own insecurities. I confided in my best friend, Mark, who had known Emma and me since college. "She's driving herself crazy," I told him over lunch one afternoon. "And she's driving me crazy too." Mark nodded sympathetically. "Has she always been like this?" "Not this bad," I admitted. "She was always a little jealous, but it used to be cute. Now it's like she's on a mission to catch me doing something wrong." "Maybe she needs therapy," Mark suggested. "She clearly has trust issues." I sighed. I don't think she'd ever agree to that. In her mind, she's not the problem. I am. That night, I brought it up carefully. I told her I thought we should see a marriage counselor, that maybe it would help her feel more secure in our relationship. She laughed bitterly. "So now I'm crazy, is that it?" "That's not what I'm saying," I said, trying to stay calm. "I just want us to be happy again." She stood up, shaking her head. "You wouldn't be so desperate to fix our marriage if you didn't have something to hide." And with that, she walked away. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we had gotten here. We had been happy once. We had been in love. But now, our marriage felt like a prison, and I was starting to wonder if there was a way out. Emma's paranoia didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. Every day felt like walking through a minefield. If I got home 5 minutes late, I had to explain where I had been, even if it was just traffic. If I took too long in the shower, she'd ask if I was washing off another woman's perfume. And God help me if my phone buzzed unexpectedly. She'd snatch it up and demand to know who was messaging me. I started feeling like a suspect in my own home, constantly under surveillance. At first, I thought she'd tire herself out, but the longer it went on, the more creative she became. One night, I woke up at around 2 a.m. to find her standing over me, my phone in her hands, the screen glowing in the dark. "What the hell, Emma?" I groaned, rubbing my eyes. She didn't even flinch. "Why do you delete your messages?" "I don't delete anything," I said, sitting up. "What are you even looking for?" She folded her arms, her expression cold. "Proof." "Proof of what?" She scoffed, throwing my phone onto the nightstand. "You know what?" I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "Emma, this is insane. You have to stop." You'll say that until I find something, she muttered, crawling back into bed. I lay awake long after she had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling, feeling exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. At some point, Emma realized she wasn't getting the reaction she wanted from me. I wasn't confessing to imaginary affairs, and I wasn't giving her any proof to justify her suspicions. That's when she changed tactics. It started small, little things designed to make me jealous. She'd mention an old high school boyfriend who had messaged her on Facebook. She'd casually bring up a conversation she had with a handsome coworker. When I didn't react, she escalated. One evening, we were at a neighborhood barbecue, and she spent the entire night talking to our neighbor, Brian. Now, I like Brian. He was a decent guy, married with 2 kids. But Emma made sure to laugh just a little too loudly at his jokes, touch his arm whenever she spoke, and lean in just close enough for me to notice. I caught her glancing at me out of the corner of her eye, waiting for my reaction. I didn't give her one. When we got home, she slammed the front door behind her. You didn't even care, did you? She snapped, arms crossed. Care about what? I asked, playing dumb. She scoffed. I was flirting with Brian all night. I shrugged, unbothered. Good for you. Her eyes narrowed. You're just pretending it doesn't bother you. No, Emma, I said, walking past her. I just don't have the energy to play these stupid games. That was the beginning of a dangerous cycle. The more I ignored her little acts of provocation, the more desperate she became to get a reaction. One night, she came home late, past midnight. That had never happened before. Where were you? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She smirked. Out where? She kicked off her heels, tossing her purse onto the kitchen counter. With a friend. I stared at her, trying to read her expression. What friend? She walked over to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and took a slow sip before finally answering. Just someone from a gym. I felt something in my stomach tighten. This wasn't like the other times. Before, it had all been calculated, carefully designed to push my buttons. But now, she was different. There was something in the way she moved, in the way she avoided my eyes, that felt off. I had seen Emma play games before, but for the first time, I had a sickening feeling that maybe this wasn't a game anymore. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. She stayed out late more often, sometimes coming home tipsy, her lipstick slightly smudged. When I asked her about it, she would just smile and say, "Why? Are you jealous?" I wanted to believe it was still part of her manipulation, but doubt had started creeping in. Then, one Friday night, she didn't come home at all. I stayed up waiting, staring at my phone, willing it to ring. But it never did. At some point, exhaustion took over, and I fell asleep on the couch. The next morning, she walked through the front door like nothing had happened. I stood up immediately. Where the hell were you? She sighed dramatically, setting down her purse. Relax, I was at Amanda's. I shook my head. No, you weren't. She finally looked at me, eyes glinting with something unreadable. And what if I wasn't? My breath caught in my throat. What's that supposed to mean? She stepped closer, tilting her head. Maybe now you know how it feels. For a moment, I thought she was just pushing me again, trying to see if I'd break. But then she pulled something out of her purse, a small velvet box. She popped it open, revealing a delicate gold bracelet, one I knew I hadn't bought for her. Where did you get that? I asked. She smirked. A gift. I clenched my jaw. From who? She shrugged, slipping the bracelet onto her wrist. Does it matter? I stared at her, feeling something crack inside me. She had won her little game. Only this time, she had taken it too far. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I just nodded, grabbed my jacket, and walked out the front door. I needed time to think. Up until now, I had been convinced that Emma's behavior was just another way to manipulate me, to make me feel as miserable as she had felt in her twisted imagination. But what if she had finally done it? What if she had actually crossed that line? I had spent so many years defending myself against accusations that weren't real. Now, for the first time, I was the one with doubts. And the worst part? I had a sickening feeling that the truth was even worse than I could imagine. I drove aimlessly for almost an hour, my thoughts tangled in a knot of suspicion and disbelief. Emma had spent years accusing me of things I never did, pushing me, testing me. But tonight felt different. The bracelet wasn't just another manipulation. It was proof that something had changed. And yet, I still didn't want to believe it. Maybe she wanted me to think she had cheated. Maybe she wanted me to feel the same paranoia she had suffered from for years. But there was one question I couldn't shake. If it was all just a game, why hadn't she come home last night? I pulled into a gas station, parked, and leaned back in my seat, staring at the ceiling. I had two choices. I could pretend I didn't see the signs, let her keep playing her games until she got bored and moved on to something else. Or I could find out the truth. I ran a hand over my face and sighed. I already knew which choice I was going to make. The next morning, I went through Emma's car while she was in the shower. I wasn't proud of it, but after everything she had put me through, I didn't feel guilty either. There was nothing in the glove compartment except old receipts and an empty pack of gum. The center console was filled with loose change and crumpled napkins. But then in the back seat, I found something that made my stomach drop, a hotel key card. I turned it over in my hands, my heart hammering. It wasn't from anywhere local. It was from a place 2 towns over. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe she had gone there with friends and just forgot to mention it. Maybe. No more excuses. I took a picture of the key card with my phone and put it back exactly where I found it. Then I walked into the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee, acting like everything was fine. That night, I casually asked Emma how her day had been. She smirked as she scrolled through her phone. Great. Busy, though. You know how it is. I took a sip of my coffee. Yeah? What did you do? She shrugged. The usual. Gym in the morning, ran some errands, lunch with Amanda. I nodded slowly. And last night? Where exactly did you stay? Her eyes flicked up to me, just for a second. Then she smirked. At Amanda's, like I said. There it was. The lie. I could feel my pulse in my throat. I set my coffee down and leaned against the counter. Funny, because I found a hotel key card in your car. The smirk disappeared. For the first time in a long time, I saw something I hadn't seen before, fear. She quickly recovered, letting out a forced laugh. Oh, that was from a girls' night out a few weeks ago. Amanda and I got a room after some drinks. I tilted my head. Really? Because I called Amanda today. She said she hasn't seen you in over a week. That did it. Emma's face paled. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I watched her carefully, waiting for another lie, another excuse. But instead, she did something unexpected. She smiled, and that smile sent a chill down my spine. Okay, she said softly, crossing her arms. So maybe I wasn't at Amanda's. But let's be honest, you don't really care, do you? My jaw tightened. What the hell does that mean? She took a step closer, looking up at me with a twisted amusement in her eyes. You've already checked out, haven't you? You've been waiting for an excuse to leave me. I clenched my fists. You're insane. She let out a bitter laugh. Am I? You stopped fighting a long time ago, Michael. And now that you think you finally caught me, you suddenly care? I exhaled through my nose, trying to control my temper. So you're admitting it? She shrugged. I'm saying it doesn't matter. I stared at her, tried to understand how we had gotten here. How the woman I married had turned into this. Someone who would rather destroy everything than face the truth. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I heard my own voice, quiet and sharp. You're right. Emma frowned. What? I met her eyes. It doesn't matter anymore. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the kitchen, the smirk finally wiped from her face. I spent the next few days in silence, going through the motions, waiting. Emma tried to act normal, but I could tell she was watching me, waiting for my next move. She didn't know that I had already made it. I met with a lawyer, laid everything out for him. He listened carefully, nodding as he jotted down notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me. You said she's been accusing you of cheating for years. I nodded. And now she's the one who's actually having an affair? Another nod. He let out a dry chuckle. That's ironic. I didn't smile. I don't care about the irony. I care about my kids. I don't want them stuck in the middle of this. The lawyer folded his hands together. If she's been unfaithful and you can prove it, you have the upper hand. Judges don't look kindly on cheaters, especially when children are involved. I swallowed hard. So what do? He slid a document across the desk. We start preparing for the inevitable. I picked it up, staring at the words. Petition for divorce. I wasn't surprised. I had seen this coming for a long time. But knowing that this was the beginning of the end, that hit differently. I nodded, setting the paper down. Let's do it. As I walked out of the office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. For too long, Emma had manipulated me, twisted reality to suit her needs. She had accused me of things I hadn't done, gaslit me into questioning my own loyalty, and finally betrayed me when I refused to play her game. But now, the game was over. She just didn't know it yet. The weight of the divorce petition in my hands felt heavier than it should have. I sat in my car outside the lawyer's office, staring at the stack of papers. I had known for a while that my marriage was dead, but now, seeing it in writing, something shifted inside me. There was no coming back from this. Emma had spent years manipulating me, trying to control me, and now she had finally given me the ammunition I needed to break free. But I wasn't going to rush into it. If I had learned anything from living with her paranoia, it was that the person who plays the smartest game wins in the end. And I wasn't going to lose. The next few days, I acted normal. I kissed Emma on the cheek in the morning. I asked about her day. I sat at the dinner table with our kids, nodding along as they told stories about school. But I was watching. Emma was watching too. She knew something had changed, but she couldn't quite figure out what. She started testing me in small ways, leaving her phone screen unlocked while she scrolled through messages, sighing loudly when a text came in, but not immediately responding. She wanted me to ask. She wanted me to snap. I didn't. Instead, I gathered everything I needed. The hotel key card had been my first real clue, but I needed more. So I started digging. I checked our shared bank statements late at night, when I was sure she was asleep. I wasn't surprised to find unusual charges, restaurants I had never been to, rideshare services in parts of town she never had a reason to visit. Then I found something else. A transaction from a jewelry store. It wasn't for the bracelet. I had already checked that. This was something else. A charge for nearly $600, made 2 weeks ago. Emma never spent that kind of money on me. I sat on the couch that night, pretending to watch TV while my mind raced. Emma walked in, holding her phone, her eyes flicking toward me as if waiting for me to ask where she had been. I didn't. She hesitated, then sat beside me. You've been quiet lately. I shrugged, busy with work. She hummed in response, not convinced. You sure nothing's wrong? I turned to her, forcing a small smile. Should there be? For a split second, something flickered across her face. It wasn't guilt. It was frustration. Emma wanted me to be suspicious. She wanted me to accuse her so she could turn it around on me, make me the villain. I wasn't playing that game anymore. That night, after she fell asleep, I made my move. I had installed a small GPS tracker in her car earlier that week. A simple device, nothing too complicated. Now, I checked the app on my phone, watching the history of where she had been. She had lied about going to lunch with Amanda. Instead, she had driven to a quiet neighborhood on the other side of town, and she had been there more than once. I clicked on the address, my heart pounding. It belonged to someone named Ryan Carter. I had never heard of him before, but I was about to. The next day, I took time off work and drove to the address. It was a small, modest house. Nothing fancy, nothing that stood out. But Emma's car had been parked outside of it 3 times in the last 2 weeks. I didn't get out. I just sat there, watching. At around 11 a.m., the front door opened. A man stepped out, stretching his arms as if he had just woken up. He was younger than me, maybe mid-30s. Fit, confident, the kind of guy who looked like he spent a lot of time in the gym. And then, my worst suspicion was confirmed. Emma walked out of the house right behind him. She was wearing leggings and a tank top, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She looked comfortable, too comfortable, like she belonged there. I clenched the steering wheel, forcing myself to stay calm. She kissed him on the cheek, laughed at something he said, then got into her car like it was the most normal thing in the world. My stomach turned. It was real. It wasn't a game anymore. She was actually cheating on me. I drove home before Emma did, needing time to process. I thought I would feel anger, betrayal, maybe even devastation. But mostly, I felt relief. For years, Emma had controlled me with her accusations, twisting reality until I barely recognized myself. And now, finally, she had given me the ultimate proof that it wasn't me who was the problem. It was her. When she walked through the door later that day, she smiled at me like nothing had happened. Hey, how was work? I met her gaze, keeping my expression unreadable. Fine. You. She stretched, yawning. Exhausting. Went to the gym, ran some errands, met Amanda for lunch. Lie. I nodded. Sounds nice. If she noticed anything different about me, she didn't show it. But I had changed, and she was about to find out just how much. That night, I contacted my lawyer again. I have proof now, I said, sending him the pictures I had taken of Emma and her new boyfriend. What's next? His response was immediate. This changes everything. We started preparing. Divorce papers were drawn up. Evidence was collected. I made sure to secure my assets, moving certain funds out of joint accounts before Emma could get to them. Most importantly, I started thinking about the kids. I knew Emma would fight for custody, but now I had an advantage. My lawyer had already told me that in cases where one parent is unfaithful, the courts tend to favor the faithful spouse, especially when children are involved. But there was one more thing I needed. A final, undeniable piece of evidence. Something that would make sure she had no way to manipulate the situation. Something that would ensure, when this was all over, I walked away with everything, while she was left with nothing. And I knew exactly how to get it. Part 5. The final piece of evidence. I wasn't rushing this. I couldn't. If I was going to take Emma down, I needed to do it right. No room for mistakes. No loose ends she could twist in her favor. For years, she had accused me of things I never did. Now, she was the one guilty, and I had to make sure she couldn't escape the consequences. I already had pictures. I already had proof of her secret visits to Ryan's house. But I needed more. I needed something undeniable. Emma thought she was in control. She thought I was still the fool who would believe her lies, who wouldn't dare question her. That worked to my advantage. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I took her phone. My hands were steady. I had spent too many years being the good guy, playing fair. That version of me was gone now. She had always been obsessed with my phone, always searching for something that wasn't there. Now, I was the one doing the searching. The first thing I checked was her messages. Most of them were normal, conversations with her friends, texts about the kids' schedules. But then, I found one contact with just a single letter as the name. R. Ryan. I opened the chat. R. Can't stop thinking about last night. Emma. Me neither. I wish I didn't have to go home. R. Soon. Just be patient. Emma. I hate pretending with him. I just want to be with you. My stomach clenched. But it got worse. I scrolled up, reading messages from weeks ago. Messages where she had laughed about how clueless I was. R. He still doesn't suspect anything? Emma. Nope. He's too busy playing the devoted husband. It's actually kind of pathetic. I swallowed back the bile rising in my throat. She wasn't just cheating. She was mocking me for trusting her. That's when I saw the pictures. They weren't explicit, but they were enough. Selfies of them in bed together. A picture of Emma wearing a necklace I had never seen before. Another of her sitting on Ryan's lap, her smile wide and happy in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. I took screenshots, sent them to myself, then deleted the outgoing messages. By the time Emma stepped out of the shower, I was already sitting at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee like nothing had happened. Later that day, I met with my lawyer. He looked over the messages and pictures, nodding with approval. This is exactly what we needed. So what's the next step? I asked. He leaned forward. We hit her with everything at once. We file for divorce with proof of her infidelity, which weakens her ability to claim assets. We also prepare for the custody battle. With this level of betrayal, we can argue that she put her own selfish desires ahead of the family's well-being. Judges don't like that. I exhaled. And the kids? That depends, he said carefully. Have they noticed what's going on? I thought about that. Our son, Jake, was 15. He wasn't stupid. He had seen the tension, heard the late-night fights. And our daughter, Lily, was 13, just old enough to understand that something wasn't right. They're already on my side, I admitted. My lawyer nodded. Good. The court considers the opinions of older children in custody cases. If they say they want to stay with you, that's a huge advantage. I clenched my fists. I don't want her taking them away from me. She won't, he said firmly, especially when we bring up the fact that her boyfriend has a criminal record. That made me pause. Wait, what? He pulled out a file. I had my investigator look into Ryan Carter. Turns out he's had some trouble with the law over the years. He slid a paper across the desk. Nothing good. Definitely not the kind of person you want around your kids. I stared at the document, anger bubbling in my chest. Emma had brought this man into our lives, into our children's world, without a second thought. She had called me the problem, and yet she had been sneaking around with someone like this. Can we use this in court? I asked. My lawyer smirked. Absolutely. That night, I came home and played the part of the loving husband one last time. Emma sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, just the satisfaction of knowing she had no idea what was coming. The next morning, she got the papers. I was already at work when she called. At first, I ignored it. Then I got a text. Emma, what the hell is this? I smiled to myself before replying. Me, divorce papers. Thought it was obvious. She called again. This time, I answered. What is wrong with you? She screeched. You're divorcing me? Just like that. I leaned back in my chair. Just like that. You don't get to do this to me, she yelled. I chuckled. Actually, I do. And I already did. She was silent for a few seconds, breathing heavily. Then, her voice turned cold. You're going to regret this. No, Emma, I said calmly. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. I hung up. This was only the beginning. Emma wasn't going to give up without a fight. But she had already lost. She just didn't know it yet. Emma didn't take the divorce papers well. For the first few days, she went through different phases. First came the denial. She thought I was bluffing, that I'd cool down and take it all back. When she realized I was serious, the anger kicked in. She screamed, cursed through things. Then came the manipulation. She tried to be sweet, acting as if none of this had happened. She started cooking my favorite meals, complimenting me, even hinting at intimacy, things she hadn't done in years. But I saw through it. She didn't want me. She wanted control. And when none of her tactics worked, she played her last card, the kids. One evening, as I sat on the couch watching TV, Jake and Lily came home from school looking uncomfortable. What's wrong? I asked. They hesitated before Jake spoke. Mom said you're trying to take us away from her. I set down the remote and sighed. She told you that? Lily nodded. She said you want to keep us from seeing her. I clenched my jaw. Emma was already twisting the truth, try to turn them against me. I never do that, I said. I want you both to have a say in this. Jake sat down across from me, his brows furrowed. Is it true, though? Are you trying to get full custody? I met his gaze. I'm fighting for what's best for you both. I don't want to keep you from your mom, but I also don't want you living with someone who makes reckless choices. He frowned. Like what? I sighed. Like bringing a man with a criminal record into your lives. Jake and Lily exchanged glances. I continued. You know that guy, Ryan, the one Mom has been seeing? Lily's eyes widened. Wait, you know about him? I nodded. I know everything. And I also know he's been arrested before. Jake's face darkened. Mom knew about this. She either knew and ignored it, or she didn't bother to check. I shook my head. Either way, she's not putting your safety first. Lily wrapped her arms around herself. I don't want to live with him. I put a hand on her shoulder. That's why I'm fighting for custody. Not to take you away from your mom, but to make sure you're safe. Jake exhaled slowly. I get it. I could see the gears turning in his head. He was smart. He was piecing things together. Emma had tried to manipulate them, but the truth was stronger. A few days later, Emma called me while I was at work. I want to talk, she said, her voice deceptively calm. About what? I asked. She sighed. Can we just meet? In person. I debated ignoring her, but I was curious. I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe after work. When I arrived, she was already seated, sipping a latte like she hadn't spent years making my life hell. You're making a mistake, she said as soon as I sat down. I leaned back. How so? She gave me a tired smile. Do you really want to go through all this? Fighting over assets, hiring lawyers, dragging the kids into court. I didn't answer. She leaned forward. What if we settle this ourselves? We don't need lawyers. We can come to an agreement, just you and me. I smirked. So now you want to be civil? She exhaled through her nose. Look, I know I messed up, okay? But we were both unhappy. You weren't perfect either. I tilted my head. Did I cheat? She flinched but recovered quickly. No, but you checked out of our marriage a long time ago. I laughed. You spent years accusing me of cheating, then actually went and did it yourself. And now you want to rewrite history. Emma's jaw tightened. I'm just saying we don't have to do this the hard way. I met her gaze. And what's your offer? She sat up straighter. 50-50 split. We divide everything fairly, no custody battle. We co-parent. I chuckled. 50-50? You think you deserve half of everything after what you've done? Emma's expression hardened. I'm still the mother of your children. I nodded. Yeah, and a judge is going to take that into account when they see the evidence of what you've been up to. Her eyes narrowed. What evidence? I smiled, pulling out my phone. You mean these? I scrolled through the pictures I had taken. Her with Ryan, the text messages, the bank statements. Her face went pale. You have no idea how much damage this is going to do to you in court, I said. Infidelity, financial misconduct, and the fact that your boyfriend has a criminal record, it's not looking good for you. Emma swallowed. You wouldn't. I slid my phone back into my pocket. Try me. She clenched her fists. You're a bastard. I smiled. Maybe, but I'm the bastard who's about to win. Emma stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. This isn't over. She stormed out of the cafe, leaving her latte untouched. I sat back, satisfied. No, it wasn't over yet, but it soon would be. That night, I finalized everything with my lawyer. The divorce was moving forward, and now the custody battle was set to begin. I had one final conversation with my kids, explaining what was going to happen. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them there would be hearings, that the judge would ask them what they wanted. Jake didn't hesitate. I want to stay with you. Lily nodded. Me too. That was all I needed to hear. Emma thought she could manipulate the situation. She thought she could twist things in her favor. But she underestimated me. For the first time in years, I wasn't playing her game anymore. I was playing my own, and I was going to win. Emma always thought she would win, even after I filed for divorce, even after I gathered evidence of her affair, even after I exposed her lies in court. Somewhere in that twisted mind of hers, she still believed she could turn it around, that somehow I would back down, give in, or let her walk away without consequences. But this wasn't her game anymore. It was mine, and I was about to end it. The day of our final hearing, I walked into the courthouse calm, focused. My lawyer had prepped me well. Emma, on the other hand, looked nervous. She was dressed to impress, tight black dress, expensive heels, but I could see it in her eyes. She was scared. She knew what was coming. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. My lawyer spoke first, laying out the facts. He presented everything. Emma's infidelity, her financial misconduct, and most importantly, her connection to Ryan Carter. The judge's expression darkened when she saw Ryan's record. He had problems with the law in the past, enough to raise concerns about his presence around my kids. Emma's lawyer tried to fight back. Your Honor, Mr. Sullivan is attempting to paint my client as reckless and irresponsible, but the fact remains that she is the mother of these children and deserves equal custody. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Sullivan, have you had Mr. Carter around your children? Emma hesitated. Too long. Only a few times, she finally admitted. My lawyer didn't even have to say anything. The damage was done. Then came the final blow. The children have also expressed their wishes, the judge said, flipping through the paperwork. Both Jake and Lily have stated clearly that they prefer to stay with their father. Emma's face fell. I saw the moment she realized it was over. She had spent years trying to turn me into the bad guy. Now, she was the one losing everything. The ruling was swift and brutal. I got full custody. Emma was granted visitation, but under strict conditions. No Ryan. No Bernastas. If she broke those rules, she would lose even that. Financially, she took an even bigger hit. Because of her infidelity and reckless spending, she wasn't entitled to half of our assets. She walked away with much less than she expected. She had spent years trying to control me. Now, she was the one powerless. When the judge read the final ruling, Emma didn't say a word. She just sat there, silent, her hands clenched into fists. After the hearing, I walked outside into the crisp afternoon air, feeling free for the first time in years. That's when I heard her voice. This isn't over. I turned to see Emma standing a few feet away, arms crossed, her face a mask of barely contained rage. I chuckled. It is Emma. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think you've won? You think you could just take my kids away? I didn't take them, I said, my voice calm. They chose me. That hit her harder than anything the judge had said. Her eyes flashed with something raw, something I had never seen before. Fear. She had spent so much time believing she was the victim, the one in control, that she never considered what would happen when people stopped believing her lies. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. For the first time ever, Emma had nothing left to say. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement, disappearing into the parking lot. And just like that, it was over. That night, I sat on my back porch with a beer in my hand, staring at the stars. Jay came out and sat beside me. So what happens now? I thought about that. About the years I had wasted in a toxic marriage. About all the fights, the accusations, the nights I spent wondering if I was the one going crazy. Then I looked at my son and smiled. Now, I said, now we live our lives. He nodded, satisfied. Inside, Lily was watching a movie, laughing. No tension, no fear. For the first time in a long time, our home felt safe. Emma could keep fighting if she wanted to. She could scheme, plot, and try to twist things in her favor. But it didn't matter anymore. She had already lost everything, and I had finally won.